The disappearance of Morgan Nick nearly 3 decades ago continues to cast a long shadow, a poignant symbol of enduring mystery that reshaped a family's life and profoundly impacted an entire community. This heartbreaking cold case from Alma, Arkansas, spotlights the extraordinary resilience of a mother, Colleen Nick, whose personal anguish evolved into a national crusade. Her daughter's name is now synonymous with the tireless effort to find missing children across America. Born on the 12th of September, 1988, in the serene town of Ozark, Arkansas, Morgan was the eldest of 3 children. Her parents soon welcomed a son, followed a year later by another daughter, forming a close and active sibling trio. Morgan cherished her relationship with her younger brother and sister, often spending hours immersed in imaginative play. Her brother in particular looked up to her. Even as Morgan was just learning to read, she'd patiently practice with children's books, frequently reading bedtime stories to him. From a very young age, her deep affection for animals was evident, and she often declared her dream of becoming a veterinarian. In elementary school, Morgan actively participated in the Girl Scouts, finding immense joy in crafting, embarking on nature trips, and simply enjoying time with her friends. When Morgan was 6, her parents divorced, yet they consciously ensured the children maintained a strong and consistent connection with their father through regular visits. In the early summer of 1995, Colleen received an invitation from a family friend to attend a Little League baseball game in Alma, a town about 30 miles away. Colleen initially hesitated, noting it was a Friday evening and the distance was considerable. Despite her reservations, she ultimately decided to go, taking Morgan along, hoping it would be a pleasant way for them to spend time together. On the evening of the 9th of June, Colleen left her 2 younger children with their grandmother and drove to the stadium. Though a modest venue, about 300 people had gathered, a typical crowd of parents and children, Colleen located her friends and they settled in to watch the game. Morgan, however, soon grew restless. She spotted 2 children she knew and was invited to join them near the stadium to catch fireflies. Colleen felt a wave of apprehension. Dusk was settling, and they were unfamiliar with Alma. She worried, a premonition of potential danger flickering through her mind. Her friends, sensing her concern, quickly reassured her, explaining their own children played safely near the stadium often. With some reluctance, Colleen agreed, and Morgan eagerly darted off with the other children. They paused briefly on a small hill, remaining within Colleen's line of sight, and Colleen maintained a vigilant watch, checking on Morgan periodically. Approximately 15 minutes later, as the baseball game concluded and players began to make their way toward the bleachers to reunite with their families, Colleen momentarily looked away. When she glanced back just seconds later, her daughter was gone. Morgan's 2 playmates were already walking towards the bleachers, but Morgan was conspicuously absent. A cold, consuming panic gripped Colleen as she rushed to the children, her voice laced with urgency, asking if they had seen her daughter. They explained that before heading back, they had paused by a car in the parking lot to shake sand from their shoes, with Morgan standing just behind the vehicle while they were in front. Once finished, they walked back, assuming Morgan had simply remained near the car to wait for her mom, and thus hadn't thought much of it. Frantically, Colleen's gaze swept the parking lot. She spotted her car, but there was no sign of Morgan. Rushing over, she frantically checked inside the vehicle, but her daughter was nowhere to be found. Overwhelmed, she returned to the children, desperate for any insight. They had no idea where Morgan could have gone, though they did recall seeing a man in the parking lot while they were playing. He stood near a red pickup truck, observing the stadium and occasionally glancing their way. At one point, he even approached them and spoke, though they couldn't recall his exact words, only that he had a distinct country accent. Suspecting this man's connection to her daughter's disappearance, Morgan's mother immediately contacted the police. Within a mere 6 minutes, officers arrived at the stadium, prioritizing interviews with the children who had last seen Morgan. Through their detailed accounts, police compiled a more precise description of the man, a white male, estimated between 23 and 30 years old, approximately 6 feet tall, with an average build, a beard, a mustache, and dark hair. His attire was casual, only jeans and no shirt. His vehicle was also vividly recalled, an old red pickup truck with Arkansas license plates and a white camper shell on the back. This particular detail immediately raised officers' suspicions, as a camper shell could easily conceal an individual. An added peculiarity was the camper's unusual brevity for the truck model, giving it an odd, disproportionate appearance, suggesting the man might have intended to use it for an abduction. Officers quickly searched the parking lot, but no matching vehicle was found. They then began questioning all 300 attendees still present. However, most had been engrossed in the game and recalled nothing unusual. A search around the stadium perimeter also yielded no results, prompting officers to expand their efforts to nearby streets. Despite their swift actions, no trace of Morgan was found that night. Colleen was utterly distraught, unable to face returning home, and spent the remainder of the night in agonizing vigil at the local fire station. The following day, the search efforts dramatically intensified. News of Morgan's disappearance spread rapidly, prompting dozens of concerned volunteers to join the search. Soon, the substantial resources of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Arkansas State Police were deployed, including helicopters for aerial reconnaissance. A composite suspect sketch, based on Morgan's friends' descriptions, was created and widely distributed across Alma and surrounding communities, appealing for anyone who might recognize the man. Initially, authorities also considered that Morgan might have simply wandered away and become lost. However, as nearly 24 agonizing hours passed without any sign of her, it became painfully clear that if that were the case, she would have been located. That evening, police began receiving alarming reports from other parents. One woman recounted that just hours before the baseball game, a stranger driving a red pickup truck had attempted to lure her 4-year-old daughter into his vehicle near a laundromat in Alma. Her description of the suspect chillingly matched the composite sketch of Morgan's possible abductor. The day after Morgan's disappearance, another report emerged from a witness in Fort Smith, a nearby town. He described seeing a man trying to lure a 9-year-old girl into a public restroom, but the girl managed to escape. Once again, the man's description closely matched the composite sketch. These incidents strongly suggested that the individual behind Morgan's disappearance might have a history of attempted abductions or even successfully committed similar crimes. Police immediately sharpened their focus on locating any red pickup truck matching witness descriptions and began reviewing the backgrounds of known offenders in nearby towns. Over the subsequent weeks, investigators received hundreds of tips about potential suspects. Yet, despite tireless work, they couldn't establish a concrete connection or confirm involvement for most individuals. Meanwhile, investigators meticulously combed the area around the stadium, collecting various items that could potentially serve as evidence, including cigarette butts and bottles. These were sent for DNA analysis, but no clear indication emerged connecting any of them to Morgan's disappearance. As for the elusive red pickup truck, police received nearly 250 calls from witnesses across various towns and even neighboring states, all reporting sightings of similar vehicles. The sheer prevalence of such models, literally thousands, proved to be a significant hurdle. Investigators attempted to check each owner, but again, no evidence emerged linking any of them to Morgan's vanishing. The pattern of painstaking investigation, yielding no definitive answers, persisted for 2 weeks, until police received a surprising and seemingly promising call. A resident of Stuttgart, a town approximately 3 hours from Alma, observed a man attempting to break into his car on his property. The homeowner startled him, and the intruder immediately fled. As the man ran, the witness claimed to see him holding a small girl by the hand. Police showed him the composite sketch of the suspect, and he confirmed that the person attempting to enter his car looked very similar, and the girl resembled Morgan. Investigators quickly launched a large-scale operation in Stuttgart, securing an area of about 10 square miles and deploying several dozen officers. Morgan's parents immediately traveled to the town, their hearts seizing with a fragile, desperate hope that their daughter would finally be found. Hundreds of volunteers, alongside the police, began methodically searching the entire town and surrounding areas. Helicopters scanned from above, and search dogs, using Morgan's belongings to acquire her scent, tirelessly worked the ground. The search continued for a grueling 16 hours, but tragically, no trace of the missing girl was found. Eventually, the police began to harbor serious doubts about the witness's story. They conducted 2 polygraph tests, both strongly suggesting deception. Although the man initially insisted on his truthfulness, he ultimately admitted to fabricating the entire account. He had indeed seen someone attempting to break into his car, but he hadn't gotten a good look at the person's face, and there was no little girl with him. The man was arrested for providing false information, an act that consumed nearly a full day of search efforts and thousands of dollars in resources. While it's unclear if he faced significant punishment, such actions typically result in a serious fine or a jail sentence. Investigators found themselves back at square one, the brief flicker of hope extinguished, leaving a profound sense of frustration. Despite these profound setbacks, giving up was never an option. The investigative team was bolstered by 17 more officers from across the state, and they refocused on meticulously sorting through the relentless influx of leads. By then, they had accumulated over 1,500 tips, yet none brought detectives any closer to finding Morgan. Her parents, though disheartened by the lack of progress, remained steadfast. As the months bled into years, their hopes for a swift resolution began to fade. Approximately a year after Morgan disappeared, Colleen Nick discovered a nonprofit organization dedicated to finding missing children. While still intensely focused on her own daughter's case, the absence of new, actionable clues meant there were no immediate trails left to follow. It was then that Colleen began channeling her immense grief and determination into helping other families enduring similar tragedies, pouring her energy into raising awareness about the ever-present dangers that could strike at any moment in a child's life. Over the next several years, police continued to follow up on various leads and question potential suspects, but tangible progress remained elusive. In 2001, 6 years after Morgan's disappearance, the Federal Bureau of Investigation released an age-progressed image showing what she might look like. That same year, several prominent television shows aired segments about her case, leading to a significant increase in tips. Although most of these tips proved to be dead ends, one, in particular, captured investigators' attention. The caller claimed that a girl's body was buried on a specific property in Boonville, a small town about an hour from Alma. Police took this tip very seriously because the person provided specific details about the case that had never been made public. In early 2002, armed with a search warrant, they brought in search dogs and meticulously dug up the entire area. However, no trace of Morgan was found. The case then remained agonizingly cold for nearly a decade. In 2010, police received another tip about a possible location in a different state where Morgan's abductor might have held her. They conducted a thorough search, but once again, there was no evidence to suggest that the girl had ever been there. Interestingly, in 2017, police returned to search the same house, but this time for a different investigation. It turned out that a man who had once lived there was serving time in prison for crimes against minors, and authorities suspected him in another similar case. Even then, however, the search yielded no new clues directly related to Morgan. In 2019, a new documentary about the case was released, and for the first time since Morgan's disappearance, police publicly shared a photograph of the red pickup truck believed to be connected to the abductor. The vehicle had been briefly captured on someone's camera during the game, but the poor quality and awkward angle made it nearly impossible to discern any crucial details. Following the documentary's release, police appealed to the public for any information about who might have owned the truck. While a series of new tips came in, despite these renewed efforts, they still couldn't make definitive progress in solving the case. This prolonged period of stagnation persisted until 2021, when investigators finally named their primary suspect, Billy Jack Lynx. Lynx had initially come to police attention shortly after Morgan's disappearance. He possessed a criminal record involving offenses against minors and, crucially, owned a red pickup truck similar to the one described by witnesses. However, back in 1995, despite searching his truck during his questioning, police could not definitively establish any connection between him and Morgan's disappearance. They had believed Billy was being truthful about his innocence at the time, and his age as significantly older than 30 contradicted the younger age range provided by Morgan's friends. Now, nearly 3 decades later, detectives revisited Lynx as a suspect, spurred by the hope that advanced DNA analysis tools could uncover any latent traces of Morgan's presence in his vehicle. This renewed focus came with complications. Billy Jack Lynx had died in 2000 while serving time for an attempted abduction that occurred just 2 months after Morgan's disappearance. In that incident, he had attempted to lure another young girl into his car while she was standing outside a store. Her alert mother scared him off and reported the incident to the police, leading to his arrest. At the time of this arrest, Lynx was 70 years old, and he died of natural causes 5 years later while still incarcerated. Another major obstacle was the whereabouts of Billy's pickup truck. After nearly 30 years, investigators had no idea if it even still existed. Undeterred, the investigators embarked on the painstaking task of tracing the pickup truck's chain of ownership since Billy's arrest. After an extensive effort, they successfully located the truck. It was still operational, and its current owner willingly granted police permission to examine it. Initially, detectives tempered their hopes, acknowledging that any DNA evidence could easily have been erased or degraded over such a long period. But against the odds, forensic experts discovered a few hairs in the truck bed that appeared consistent with Morgan's braces. These vital samples were immediately sent to a specialized Texas lab equipped with the very latest DNA analysis technology for closer examination. It took 8 months of meticulous work, but finally, a monumental breakthrough occurred. The lab successfully extracted a DNA sample from the hair and compared it to Morgan's mother's DNA. The results were conclusive. They indicated a close genetic match in the first degree of relation. This meant the hair almost certainly belonged to one of Colleen's children or siblings. Colleen Nick adamantly stated she had never heard of Billy Lynx and had never met him. Given that no other immediate family member of Morgan's could have been in that specific truck, the forensic evidence strongly implicated that the hair belonged to Morgan Nick herself. On the 1st of October, 2024, police held a press conference to formally announce that Billy Jack Lynx was now definitively considered responsible for Morgan's abduction, expressing no doubt about his involvement. Sadly, almost 29 years after her disappearance, no one connected to the case believes Morgan could still be alive. Investigators suspect that Billy killed her within the first few days after the abduction, but her final resting place remains unknown. Even though the case is now essentially solved in terms of identifying the abductor, the police have declared their unwavering commitment to continue the search for her remains. However, without a confession from Lynx, who is deceased, this critical task remains profoundly challenging. Detectives are also now reviewing Billy Lynx's past for his possible involvement in other unsolved cases, considering his history of attempted abductions. Police suspect that he could have a much longer and more extensive history of such offenses. At the time of Morgan's abduction, he was already 70 years old, and his service in the military during World War II might have provided him with certain skills potentially relevant to his crimes. Morgan's disappearance left an indelible mark on Arkansas. In a poignant tribute, authorities even decided to rename the state's Amber Alert system to the Morgan Alert, serving as a constant, urgent reminder to the public and a symbol of all missing children. As for her mother, Colleen Nick, she continues to tirelessly aid other children and families through her nonprofit organization, the Morgan Nick Foundation. This profound work has become her primary means of coping with the immeasurable loss of her daughter. Though deep within, she still clings to a small, persistent flicker of hope that Morgan might, against all odds, somehow still be alive. The path to complete closure is still being forged, but these recent scientific advancements offer the most tangible hope yet that Morgan's story will one day reach its full, albeit painful, conclusion. This case stands as a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of profound loss, highlighting how relentless dedication and the relentless march of scientific progress can, even after decades, bring forth crucial answers, offering a measure of clarity and perhaps, eventually, peace. The chilling silence surrounding the disappearance of Winston Arthur Maxey III, a 15-year-old Idaho boy who vanished in 1971, has finally been broken. For over half a century, his unidentified remains rested in an Oregon cemetery, initially marked only as unidentified male juvenile, and known by investigators as Frog Boy due to the condition of his body. The unwavering dedication of law enforcement and the transformative power of modern DNA technology have at last brought his name to light, offering a measure of solace to a family long haunted by his absence. In the spring of 1971, Winston Arthur Maxey III, a youth brimming with the hope of finding employment, embarked on a journey from his family home in Boise, Idaho. His destination was the Oregon coast, specifically the Coos Bay area, where he believed job opportunities awaited him. Before departing, he informed his sister that he was heading to Coos Bay and planned to hitchhike his way to the Oregon coast. Tragically, the optimism of his departure soon gave way to a profound and agonizing silence. His family never received any further communication from him, leaving them in a perpetual state of worry and uncertainty about his whereabouts and well-being. Just a few short months later, on the 29th of July, 1971, human remains were discovered floating in Snedden Creek, located in the Englewood area of Coos County, Oregon. The local authorities, including the Coos County Sheriff's Office and the State Medical Examiner, initiated an immediate investigation. They meticulously canvassed neighborhoods, followed up on leads, and appealed to the public for assistance. The condition and positioning of the body led the investigators to nickname the individual Frog Boy, due to decomposition and the lack of identifying information. Officials were unable to determine the cause of demise. The discovery raised immediate concerns, but without a clear link to a missing person, the case remained unresolved. This John Doe case then receded into the annals of cold cases, a stark reminder of unsolved mysteries, periodically revisited with the slim hope that new scientific advancements might one day unlock its secrets. Despite efforts to locate him, there were no clear leads or sightings that could help track his movements after he left for Oregon. The unidentified body was subsequently interred in a local cemetery, its grave bearing the poignant inscription, "Unidentified Male Juvenile." Unbeknownst to Winston Arthur Maxey III at the time of his disappearance, he had fathered a child in Idaho. The child was later placed for adoption, and Winston continued on his journey, not knowing the life he had left behind. In 2016, Lori Merriam, Winston's daughter, who had been given up for adoption, began a determined search for her biological father, a man whose name was not listed on her birth certificate. Lori had spent her life with unanswered questions about her origins. Her search led her to her biological mother, who shared a painful piece of the past. At just 15 years old, she had been forced to give up her baby, and she revealed that the father was another 15-year-old, Winston Maxey. Lori shared her profound experience of meeting her biological mother. "When we first met, we hugged, and it was just like instant connection that was a puzzle piece that was missing and just filled my heart. I cannot even describe the connection." Motivated by the need for answers, Lori created a Facebook page titled, "Where in the World is Winston Maxey?" hoping to connect with anyone who might have known him or had information about his whereabouts. She also filed a missing persons report to make his disappearance official in the national database. However, despite her efforts, she encountered a dead end. Nobody had seen or heard from Winston since the 1970s. Through her research, Lori learned that Winston had reportedly fallen in with the wrong crowd during his teenage years. He was known to have had a strained relationship with his family and had ultimately run away from home, vanishing without a trace. The critical turning point in this decades-long cold case arrived nearly 5 decades later, in 2016, thanks to officials starting to investigate cold cases. Lori's quest to find her father led to a groundbreaking forensic effort that exhumed Frog Boy's remains and unlocked a long-lost identity through DNA. The Coos County Sheriff's Office, recognizing the immense potential of evolving forensic science, collaborated with the State Medical Examiner. A DNA sample was carefully extracted from the remains, and using a grant from the Oregon State Medical Examiner's Office, the team submitted the DNA to the National Missing and Unidentified Person Database. They also collaborated with Parabon Nanolabs, a leading genetic genealogy service renowned for its work with law enforcement agencies on cold cases, for further analysis. In May 2021, after another 5 years had passed, Parabon provided a detailed DNA profile of the unidentified boy. Although the profile did not reveal a name, it produced key insights into ancestry, skin tone, eye and hair color, and facial morphology. This data helped narrow the search and was meticulously compared against records from cold cases, missing persons databases, and genealogical databases. Eventually, the DNA evidence led investigators to the Maxey family. Detectives from Coos County reached out, and requested a DNA sample from Winston's biological sister to confirm the match. Once her sample was submitted and analyzed, the authorities were able to confirm that the remains found in 1971 belonged to Winston Arthur Maxey III, who was born in 1956 and was a 15-year-old boy from Boise, Idaho. The identification of Winston Arthur Maxey III brought an overwhelming wave of emotions and a profound sense of closure to his family. For Lori Merriam, it was the end of a long search and the beginning of healing. Frog Boy was finally identified, and the missing persons case was solved. Winston's daughter articulated this bittersweet relief in a Facebook post following the official announcement. Today, the press release went out. The John Doe had now been identified. It brings me and my family some closure, but we still do not know what happened. Indeed, while the identity of the long-lost teenager has been confirmed, the precise circumstances surrounding his death remain shrouded in mystery. The forensic limitations of 1971 meant that no cause of death could be determined when his remains were initially discovered. There is no indication of foul play being explicitly ruled out or confirmed at the time. The question of what happened to Winston and how he passed away is still under investigation. The passage of 5 decades further complicates any potential reinvestigation into the manner of his death. Currently, the Coos County officials are diligently working with Winston's family in Idaho to issue a demise certificate and facilitate the return of his remains to them. This final act will allow for a measure of peace and a chance for his loved ones to finally mourn and remember Winston, whose story was interrupted for far too long. The case of Winston Arthur Maxey III stands as a compelling testament to the enduring power of hope and the remarkable advancements in forensic science. It highlights how the persistent efforts of individuals, combined with cutting-edge technology, can illuminate even the darkest and most prolonged cold cases, providing long-awaited answers and a path towards healing for families who have waited for decades. While the full narrative of Winston's final moments may forever elude investigators, his name has been reclaimed from the anonymity of an unmarked grave, his story now finally being told